Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to episode 24 of Monorail and Memoirs. Today we'll be talking how we would plan a budget Disney trip. I am not the person to ask about this. I'm a member of DVC. I have a wife who likes expensive food. I appear to have got no handle on my credit card whenever I go to Disney, and the American Express man begins to shout at me. So we will very much be expecting Lauren to be the point on this. But before we get into it, Lauren, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. I'm wearing my favourite Spirit jersey, the
Yeah.
Accommodation. I just absolutely love it. It's so good. And it feeds into the budget-friendly thing. I got it at the outlets.
We can discuss
We can
outlets
discuss it
merchandise
out.
as well if we need to. I was glad to say because you've not stayed at the Art of Animation, have
I
you?
have not, no, but it
Hmm.
looks good.
It looks good, and that's all that matters. Well, with that in mind, then, folks, today we're going to get into what we would do to plan a budget Disney trip, and we're mainly going to be focusing around a family of four coming from the UK. So there's going to be several components to this. We're going to be thinking about flights, accommodation. We're going to talk about tickets and where's best place to get them. Note, none of this is sponsored. If any of these places wish to sponsor us, please let me know. But none of this is sponsored. We can talk about the difference between a villa versus Disney resorts when it comes to accommodation. Talk about little things about cars and what have you, and how we can go about getting. We would call it a hire car in the UK, but here it's called a rental car. If you ever
Around.
say hire car, they really don't know what you mean, and I sometimes forget. So with that in mind, Lauren, let's start talking about flights first. Then, but how are we going to do this? What's the best time of year to come? What's the best approach from a financial standpoint?
Yeah, so obviously, avoiding school holidays is just the same for every single holiday. And now I know in the US you have slightly different school holidays than we do in the UK, but generally from the UK, I tend to avoid July, August time. Easter is also really, really busy because there's also a couple of American holidays during that time. Is it Memorial
But
Weekend?
there's also this holiday called Easter. But yeah,
No, but there's also, I think there's possibly like Memorial Day weekend or Martin Luther King Jr. Day or something
there's
like that.
federal holidays around Easter.
Yeah.
Yes.
And obviously Christmas time is super busy as well. So if I was looking to be budget, I would definitely look at the end of January, start of February. There are some dates in November that are okay, but I generally, for my flights, look on websites such as Skyscanner, that sort of thing, because they compare all of the different, airlines and operatives and things like that you can get all of your flights from.
Mm-hmm.
Another big consideration about this is whether or not you're fussed about it being direct or indirect. So I remember as a kid, we used to always go indirect and we would go completely around the houses, but it gave us a Florida holiday, it gave us a Disney holiday, and that wasn't normal for people who grow up in Burnley. People don't generally go to Florida every year, and everyone says, gosh, how have you been so many times? My parents were very savvy. And they got us there by hook or by crook. They got us there. So sometimes that would mean, spending whole days traveling. So indirect flights are much, much cheaper. I did do a little kind of comparison, and so taking like kind of the last week in January, for example, it was around £400 for a direct flight, which I think is very reasonable. That's return as well. But if you were to go indirect, it would be around the 350 mark. So you're saving £50. And for a lot of families, if you're taking a family of four, that's £200.
Well, folks, you will see when we get to the end of this, we actually have a little bit of a presentation as to how we've broken down the numbers. The pound to the dollar rate at the minute is one Great British pound is about $1.35, $1.36. To give you an idea, so if we're talking £400, public maths indicate you should be looking around the 550 mark.
Yeah. So obviously they are quite cheap, for flights to Florida. If you were to look at the more peak times, it would be more than double the price.
And I think one of the things that people forget is when it comes to flying to Orlando, there are actually a few airports around Orlando. So you've got MCO, which is Orlando International. There's also Sanford, which is about 40 minutes away from Orlando, which is a little bit quieter. a lot of internal flights in the US, but there are still occasionally international flights. Tampa is only about an hour and a half west from Orlando. And then you've also got Melbourne as well, not to be confused with Melbourne, Australia, but that's about an hour and 45 east of Orlando. And I believe seasonal flights will be starting from Birmingham on TUI from Birmingham, clearly, to Melbourne, Florida. Get it right, Melbourne, Florida, and then it would be a bit of a drive. But the point is, within that 2-hour bubble of the parks, there are actually quite a few options, although Skyscanner by default will take you down the MCO route. And it's not a bad option, but there are other options available. Cool. Yeah. With that in mind, then, that's a flight. Obviously, if you're in the US, internal flight, I'm near DC, we got 5 flights a day from Ronald Reagan down to Orlando, so not too much of an issue. Well, if you're flying with American Airlines, of course, who will cancel your flight last minute and not give you an explanation. Thanks, American. Nevertheless, moving on to accommodation then, how are we going to go about a budget approach to accommodation?
Yeah, so something that we've always done is a villa straight off the bat. Villas can seem expensive, but you've got to think about what you're paying for. And, you're paying for a lot of the time your own pool, your own bedroom, your own living room, kitchen, dining room. You can have as much room as you want, essentially. Whereas when you're looking at a hotel, you've literally just got your bedroom. So if you go in with more than just your family of 4 that, could be in a hotel room absolutely fine if the children are young, it then becomes really expensive and really kind of convoluted, everybody having different hotel rooms. So I am massive on the villa option. Now, villas being villas, you kind of pay for what you get sometimes. You can't guarantee quality. A lot of the time, these are people's houses who are just kind of renting it out. So I would definitely recommend going through a legit site such as Booking.com, Airbnb, all those sorts of sites, just so that you've got some sort of buyer protection. Because the holiday that we've just been on, we had a lovely villa. It was fantastic, but we paid for pool heating and the pool heater didn't work. Now, if it was just a conversation between me and the vendor, I may have not got my money back. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. And actually, one of the things you touched on with villas is there are a range of possibilities. For if you've got 2 families going, for example, and you might need 5 bedrooms, it actually works out per person cheaper than getting a hotel, especially if that hotel is on Disney property. And I do have some examples later on what your sort of per night price is going to be at some of those Disney hotels. But of course, Lauren, if we're going to Disney, we're going to want tickets to go to Disney. So when we think about from a UK perspective, how are we going to go about getting those Disney tickets?
Yeah, so you can obviously get them straight from Disney, that's absolutely fine, but they will never ever have a discount on them. They never do, discounted prices. They never do like voucher codes. Nothing like that exists. The price is the price, and that is what you're getting. If you go through different vendors such as attraction tickets or Florida ticks and things like that, sometimes you can get a voucher code that has maybe 10-15% off. So it's worth shopping around. It really is. Yes, sometimes it is only the case of £10, £20, but every little helps, especially when you've got a family of 4 going. Something also to note as well about the UK tickets is we actually get the memory maker for free within those tickets. And the memory maker is around $210. So for those that don't know what a memory maker is, there's lots of different photographers throughout the Disney parks who can take official photos of you and your family, maybe in front of the castle or after you've been on a ride. If there's a ride photo, then you can scan your card and it'll come onto your Disney account. So you can view all of those photos and download them. So for me, it's a big win being able to have those on those tickets as standard.
Yeah, that's fair. And obviously, from a US perspective, you can just buy single day tickets. You can buy, whatever requirements you want. Worth pointing out that by default, I believe the UK tickets have got park hopper included as well.
Yes, they do. Yeah, you don't just get single park days. You do just get all access to every park. And now that you don't need to do the reservation and the booking system, you can park up whenever you wanted. It was only a year or so ago, a couple of years ago, that you actually had to stay in one park until 2 p.m, I think it was, and then you were able to park up, but now there's no such restrictions.
Yeah, which makes far more sense. But yeah, from a US perspective, you will either pay for your base ticket does not include park hopping. That is an additional charge. So just something to consider if you're coming from coming from the US. There is one other thing though, Lauren. If you're staying off property, you're gonna need transportation.
Yeah, and that is one of the sticking points. So when you look at the villas and you think, wow, that's so cheap. Why do people ever stay on Disney or stay in a hotel? It's the transport to get to the parks. Orlando is vast. You can stay in Davenport, Kissimmee, closer to Orlando Centre itself, and you are miles and miles away from everything. Even within Disney, you have to drive everywhere. It's not like if you've ever been to Disneyland Paris, when you can walk between the parks and downtown Disney. There's none of that going on in Florida. It is all, you either need Disney bus or your own car or other transportation. It's very vast. So yeah, you would need to hire a car essentially, or how Americans do it, get a rental car.
Get a rental.
So yeah, that needs to factor in. So obviously the cost of renting the car in the first place. There are some cheaper ways to do that. From the airport, you can get a rental car from a shuttle service. It adds a bit of extra faff onto your day, but if you're really hell-bent on saving money, that does save money. It can be in the regions of a few £100. If you are looking at a specific car, or you only want the dirt cheap option. So it can be fairly cheap, but then you've got your gas price on top of that. And one of the main sticking points that not a lot of people know is you have to pay for parking at Disney.
Yeah, you do.
And it's not a case of a fiver like it is in town. $30 a day.
A day, $30 every time you want to drive your car on. Now, if you are staying on Disney property, of course, you do not have to pay. All you have to do is when you get to the window is show them evidence on your phone of your hotel stay, and they'll just wave you straight through. But yeah, it's a bit of a stickler, that isn't it, Lauren?
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realise that you have to pay for it, and so when they come up to the pay gates, they're like, "What on earth is this? What am I having to do?" And it's not even like, as I say, £5. A bit of a negotiable amount of money nowadays is £5. If you're able to afford a holiday to Florida, £5 will be a negotiable amount. $30. So if you even go into the parks for 10 days of your trip, which would be normal, $300 is added onto your ticket there.
Might as well just stay on a DVC resort, to be honest, Lauren. That's what I'm taking from this. But we're gonna, firstly, well researched, and thank you for that contribution. But what we're going to do now is just give a little bit of a rundown as to what this is going to look like. So in terms of how we expect this to cost, we said about flights. You mentioned about going direct to Orlando, £400 return, which is $536 at the minute. And the dates we're looking through is the 26th of January through the 9th of February for 2026. So with that in mind, accommodation then, as you mentioned, there's a range of options here. So villa, we're talking between sort of $1,300 and £2,600, or $1,800 and $3,500, and that's for 2 weeks. Now, of course, depending on the number of people you've got, that could be a really salient option. But also, Disney itself is more expensive.
Yeah,
Port Orleans.
Bearing in mind that is for one room, whereas the villas, you're getting a whole house.
Yes, absolutely. So the Port Orleans, just to give you an idea, Port Orleans is a moderate value resort. You're looking at £3,800, $5,100, and what we've done here is to give you an idea. This is some of the price per night of these 2 weeks in question at Disney. So Coronado Springs, a little bit more expensive than we just shown in Port Orleans, but you start getting into some of the bigger Disney resorts, or my apologies, or the more prevalent ones like Animal Kingdom Lodge. Worth pointing out that Animal Kingdom Lodge price is not for a Savannah View room. That's just for a normal room. And we continue with this theme here. Your contemporary resort with the A-frame, so you're actually at a deluxe resort on the monorail loop. It's nearly $700 a night. And to top it off, naturally, we had to look at what the Grand Floridian was going to be. And the Grand Floridian, $852 per night, which in pounds at the minute is ranging at about the sort of high 600s in terms of this, because the price on the screen here is clearly dollars. But to give you an idea, that would be nearly $12,000 for just your hotel room alone. That's an awful lot of money. Park tickets, Lauren has mentioned these, so £631 for an adult, nearly £600 for a child, and don't forget your car. This doesn't include gas, of course, or petrol. Only Americans could call the liquid gas. But moving on, the total cost then for a family of 4 in this budgeted format. Again, we've gone for the cheapest options across the board here. Is just over £5,500, which is $7,500. That's an awful lot of money. It doesn't matter who you are. That is a lot of money. And I think that can be one of the sticking points that puts people off going to Disney.
Yeah, and when I was actually doing the breakdown, when I was timesing everything by 4, ironically, it's the Disney tickets that is the most expensive part of that whole holiday. So the accommodation, pretty reasonable. The flights, pretty reasonable. The car rental, I was really impressed with the car rental. £300 for 2 weeks. I think that's fantastic. It's the Disney tickets that are the main issue here. They're just so expensive.
I mean, if you've got 2 children, that's £1,200 just on the children, or $1,600. You're spending $2 and a bit grand on park tickets alone, and that is more than your accommodation.
Yeah, and obviously that's not including Universal. It's not including SeaWorld. A lot of people, if they're doing like a one-off, once-in-a-lifetime holiday, they want to book all that in as well, and that's even more expensive. Those tickets are over £1,000.
Now, one of the reasons why it is so expensive is because Disney will publicly state that the biggest complaint their guests have is that the resorts are too filled. They're too packed. They're too busy. And so the way in which they're doing this is by having increasing price hikes above the cost of inflation to try and reduce the number of guests in the park. But Disney keep turning a profit, and increasing profits, may we add, so they don't really care. And they're actually increasing profit per person as well, because as people do begin to get moved away from the annual trips more into every few years or every decade or even once in a lifetime trips, they're mentally prepared to spend more money each time.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of money. Lauren, we thank you for your contributions when it comes to this. Yes, trying to do a budget Disney trip is difficult. But if you have any other ideas that we may have missed, please let us know. If you do wish to stay at a 2-star hotel with a pool that hasn't been used for a couple of decades, maybe you could get a little bit cheaper. But with that in mind, as always, we will thank you for paying attention this week. It's really a passion project for us, and so we are grateful. As you can see in the ticker down at the bottom, we're going to do an episode where we have one of you come on, and we will debate with you what your favorite park is. We'll forwards, against, and have a nice little discussion about that. So just feel free to comment on this video, email us, monorailmemoirs@gmail.com, or get hold of us on Instagram and TikTok. We will be coming back next week, as always. But until then, please stand clear of the doors. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.